Highway 1 to get here, the way to Santa Cruz is not easy on Sunday afternoon. But I want to give up my seat here and turn it over to PD. I think we all met him when he taught us on Zoom. He's been at Mount Madonna for 30 years, or we're not counting 40? Oh, going on 50. My, how time passes. And a beloved teacher there, not only of math in the school, but also certainly of the practice. So we are continuing our study. You're a great teacher of the Gita, and I'm going to take my notes, which I wrote with your great questions you gave us, and let you instruct. And what we're looking at here is you have till a bit before 5, and then to have questions and answers as needed. And we want to break by 5:10, have a few minutes, and then we're going to have a 15-minute meditation starting at 5:15. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Namaste.
Well, it's really nice to be back. Thank you all for inviting me back. One of the things that I noticed when I was invited initially, the second time through, was that I wouldn't be here. So I think Albina said, well, come earlier. And when she mentioned chapters 11 and 12 of our study today, I thought, perfect. Those are my favorite chapters of the whole Bhavagad Gita. So it fit really well for me.
Excuse me, could you hand me my book? That's
Sure.
too flat.
So I didn't memorize, so I'll be reading a bit. So,
Okay.
all right. Like a journey down a river to the ocean, Arjuna has been traveling this river for 10 chapters. Sometimes the current was fast, with level 5 rapids, like chapters 1 and 2, where he sees his friends and relatives ready to do battle. And he starts making excuses after excuse, reason after reason, to convince himself that he should not fight the war. Sometimes the river meandered along, like in chapters 3 through 5, on Karma Yoga, where the subtle teachings of Karma Yoga were taught: action in inaction, and inaction in action. And now in chapter 11, the river opens up to the delta and appears motionless, with the ocean far off in the distance, and the land behind him disappearing into the past. From here we see Arjuna on the threshold of achieving the divine eye, or say, his divine eye being opened to the cosmic form of Sri Krishna. A great anticipatory question, which I forwarded to you a week ago, is what will he see? Positing that Arjuna represents all true seekers, the question can become, what will we see when our divine eye is opened? Believing, trusting, and knowing that enlightenment is fully here in the present moment only, and by just turning the angle of our mind, the divine manifestation can be experienced or seen. How would our seeing be different from Arjuna's, or anyone else's who are bestowed the divine eye? Or, another rendering of the question, what will our samskaras, our prints of our own past actions, present to us? What if changing the angle of the mind is just to accept the creation presented to us in each moment as it is right now? What if changing the angle of our mind is simply a humble request to be freed from binding thoughts, or to be immersed in the spirit of Karma Yoga, or to embrace the eternal Dharma of existence, Sanatana Dharma? What would our vision of the cosmic form be then? And from the Mundaka Upanishad, Om. When the seer sees the golden-hued creator and ruler of the universe, the divine self within, and source of infinite bliss, then that knower of truth, gives up the idea of merit and demerit, becoming taintless, and attains the highest goal, perfect equanimity. Chapter 11, the Yoga of the Vision of the Cosmic Form, or Bhakti Yoga 1. Is there a self or God principle in all of creation, and can one realize the self? A yogi answers yes. How? Through yoga. Analogies from the Vedas, the ancient scriptures, the idea of gold ornaments, and the gold merchant. The gold merchant puts all his bangles and jewelry into a box and doesn't treat them as separate, sees them all as gold. And also the idea of the clay pots and clay. All clay pots can be broken and reduced back down to the clay. So how do we get to chapter 12? Through yoga. The yoga of meditation in chapter 6. Sacrifice or yajna in chapter 4. Doing one's duty, chapters 3 through 5 on karma yoga. Hearing and reflecting on the eternal positive qualities in nature, chapter 10. Devotion and Bhakti Yoga in chapters 7 through 12. In chapter 10, the Yoga of the Divine Manifestation, this chapter showed us where we can see God in the creation. In all forms, the self exists, but manifests more apparently in those forms that exhibit a special quality. In particular, this special quality is seen in classes of beings and objects, such as, of all animals, the self manifests more apparently in the lion. For the lion has the qualities of fearlessness, dominion over the animals, guardian of the forest, and many other qualities. And of all rivers, the Ganga River, for it is born in the purity of waters originating in the Himalayas, where very few people can pollute it at its source. Its length, its ability to provide water to 10% of the Earth's population, etc., etc. Chapter 11. Naturally, Arjuna's curiosity was piqued as to whether the divine manifestation extended to the whole of creation, all beings and all things at once, or to say if it extended to Krishna himself. So the setting for the revealing of Krishna's divine manifestation. These are ideas that are taken from different aspects of yoga. 1. Space and time concepts cease. Our normal waking consciousness is governed by the concepts of space and time. If one can go beyond space and time-bounded awareness, then what would one experience? I asked you all to think about what would your experience of the vision of the cosmic form look like. 2. The 5 elements stop rotating at the ether element, from Tantra and Ayurveda. Breath stopping, number 3. Normal breath flow in one nostril or the other is an equal amount of time each hour. For 1 minute on each of the switches, the breath flows in both nostrils equally. In samadhi, the inward and outward flow of breath stops completely, and only internal flow of energy or prana is felt. Samadhi, transcendental awareness. There's different levels of samadhi. In the beginning, samadhi was seed. So samadhi or transcendental awareness with reasoning. Samadhi with reflection. Samadhi with bliss only. At this level of bliss, space and time disappear, and we only have causation. Then, of course, we have the without seed samadhis of Dharma Mega, or cloud of virtue samadhi, and Kaivalya, complete isolation. 5. Fear and its relationship to desire. Arjuna had a desire to see the cosmic form. Arjuna also still had a fear of death and was still tied to his samskars, or prints of past lives. So what do the shlokas say of chapter 11? Summary. One of the beauties of the Song of the Divine, the Bhavagad Gita, is why it is considered a universal scripture, in that its ability to allow us to see ourselves as Arjuna, to relate to his struggles and relate to Krishna as the voice of reason, clarity, and authority that we hear in our quiet moments, meditations, practice. Arjuna hears Krishna say that he existed before Manu, and that he knows all his previous births. Arjuna humbly asks Krishna that if Krishna feels he is ready, may Krishna bestow the divine cosmic vision of the Lord to him. Arjuna sees all the positive sides of the Lord's eminence, effulgence, glory, beauty, power, control, the Creator, and more. So how is his vision recorded? Verse 13. Arjuna identified the whole universe of manifold varieties in the very body of the God principle, without the concept of space and time. 14. Arjuna was deeply affected on seeing that transcendental vision of the cosmic form. He was filled with joy and wonder. Consequently, his hair stood on end. He bowed his head and spoke to Krishna with joined palms. 15. O Lord, the whole creation, from the heavenly region to the earthly region, all gods, all kinds of beings, including the Creator, sitting on a lotus, all sages, the celestial serpent I can see. 16. O Lord of the universe, O cosmic form, I see all the finite objects with various names and forms appear from you, the infinite, who has neither beginning nor end nor middle. I see you in a form of Lord Vishnu, who is wearing a crown and holding a club and discus. From your cosmic form, a blazing light is spreading from all sides. It is very hard to look at this blazing light of fire and sun. It is immeasurable. And moving on through to 38. You are that supreme being who is beyond existence and non-existence. You are the primal God and pure conscious principle, source of creation, the ancient God. The whole universe emanates from you, is sustained by you, and merges back into you. As the pure conscious principle, you are the knower. You are also knowable by pure intellect. After self-realization, nothing remains to be known. You are the highest goal. It is you alone who pervades all multitudes of forms. Krishna finally says that all these warriors arrayed in front of you will die. You just be an instrument of their deaths. Arjuna sees that he will win the war, and then all his enemies will be defeated. Krishna says, get up now and fight. Remember that in chapter 1, he couldn't see him destroying his family members and his teachers. And then he started giving excuses as to why he should just sit down and desist from the battle. Fear. But then Arjuna sees death and destruction in Krishna's cosmic form, and his fear arises. Krishna says, go beyond fear. One of Arjuna's major fears is that he feels he will be killing his family members and teachers. All fear is rooted in the fear of death. Every creature wants to continue living indefinitely. So the fear of death has been reinforced for every human incarnation that we have, as well as other incarnations if one accepts the evolution of our species. So how do we stop eating fear presently in our own present incarnation? Continuing the Gita, Arjuna could not take the death and destructive side of the cosmic form, even though he understood that creation can't exist without annihilation, annihilation being the seed of new creation. And so Arjuna requests Krishna to appear in his normal human form again. Krishna does so, and Arjuna's fear and terror at seeing this destructive side of Krishna's cosmic form subsides. And the chapter ending. Arjuna now realizes who Krishna is and begins to beg forgiveness for any lapses in judgment, consciously or unconsciously, in any interaction he had had with Krishna. And here's a prayer from the Vedas. Karacharana kritam bhak, kayajam karmajam ba, shravana nayana jamba, manasam ba paradham, vihitam avihitam ba, sarvametat kramasva, jai jai karunadhe, Shri Mahadeva Shambho. Do thou forgive me, O Lord, for all my sins, created with my ears, my eyes, my mind, while doing actions enjoined or otherwise. Chapter 11 concludes with verses 54 and 55. 54. O Arjuna, I can be seen in my cosmic form by one point of devotion. 55. One can achieve oneness with me by 1. Dedicating all works to me. 2. Choosing God realization as your supreme goal. 3. Taking complete refuge in me. 4. Being completely non-attached. 5. Being a friend to all and an enemy to none. Chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga number 2. The shlokas in summary. Arjuna asks, which are better knowers of yoga? Those who worship the imperishable, unmanifested, or God without form, or the manifested? Sri Krishna, Ma, Jesus, Ishvara, Buddha, or the sadhu, or form of God with form. Krishna says it is hard to worship the unmanifested, imperishable, indefinable, omnipresent, unthinkable, unchanging, immovable, and eternal, as we, humans by nature, are centered in our bodies, as doers of action. Thus we have an ego of being a doer. Therefore Krishna says that those who fix their mind on Krishna with steadfast devotion, worshipping Krishna, endowed with supreme faith, are the best in yoga. Both worshippers, however, achieve the same goal, that is liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So how to worship the unmanifest? Restraining all the senses, being even-minded everywhere, and devoted to the welfare of all beings. In the Brahma Sutras, we hear non-attachment and meditation on the qualities of the Supreme, eternal, unborn, unmanifest, without form, indefinable, etc. Krishna then gives 31 qualities of a true devotee. And rather than thinking, oh, I'm not doing number 12 very good, or 31, in a way, just allow the qualities to wash over you. This is one of the ideas that Vinay, one of my yoga brothers, suggests in reading sometimes a lot of qualities that may not fit exactly in the moment for us. So I'll pause after each one so we can have a bit of reflection. So number one, no ill will to any being. And we notice the idea of being encompasses the animals, the plants, the elements themselves, the earth. Being friendly, number two. And friendship doesn't necessarily mean having friends. It's an attitude of mind, openness, a welcoming. Number three, compassionate, like Buddha's teachings. For no selfish interest or no self-interest. Bhavagad gives the definition of love as the state completely devoid of selfish interest. Number five, egoless. So giving up the idea of being the performer. We heard in our earlier reading the idea, if you can't meditate, if you can't offer meditation, you can't merge in the Supreme, then just offer your actions, the fruit of your actions to God. Even-minded in pleasure and pain. Number six. Tend to love pleasure and push the pain away. So acceptance of both is release. Being forgiving. We can all think of maybe a person in our past, or maybe presently, that forgiveness that we're still holding on to, not willing to give freely. This grouping, number 8 through 11, ever contented, self-control, firm determination of mind and intellect. Mind and intellect dedicated to God. And 13, non-agitation by the world and non-agitating or being hurtful to the world. Free from fear and anxiety when achieving worldly desires. A fairly large grouping of 14 to 19. Having no expectations. Purity, saucha. Skillful at work. Impartial. Free from emotional disturbances. And renouncing the ego of being a doer. To 22. Renunciation of all good and evil. We could say non-attachment to our good deeds. It might seem easy to relinquish the evil, but our minds show their power to the ego. And the ego wants to feel powerful by embracing that evil, even though we push it away. It hangs around. Desirelessness and non-grieving, non-hating. (23 to 26), free from attachment, same to friend and foe. Wow, same to friend and foe. Same in honor and dishonor. We love how the ego gets propped up in honor, and we abhor dishonor. Alike in the pairs of opposites, heat and cold, pleasure, pain, light and darkness, embracing all equally. And lastly, the last four, the same in censure and praise. Contentment. No abode, or one could say non-possessiveness. A still mind. Equanimity. Yada pasha pashate rupmavarnam kartarnam yesham purusham brahmayonim tata vidvan punya pape vidhuya niranjana paramam samyam upaiti. When one sees the vision, form, divine form of the divine, the creator, the highest self existing in the heart, then one gives up the idea of merit and demerit, becomes taintless, and enjoys the blessing of perfect equanimity. And lastly, the chapter concludes in verse 20. Krishna says, devotees who have complete faith in him, whose only aim is to achieve God, and who follow this immortal wisdom spoken of in the previous verses on the qualities of a true devotee, are exceedingly dear to him. So I'll put out some of the questions that I left the thoughts on and a couple more that I thought of since then. And we can use that as a jumping off point for questions or discussion on the chapters that we've read or listened to today, summaries. So again, what would your experience of the vision of the cosmic form of God be? We heard Arjuna, who was steeped in the Vedas and steeped in his tradition, describing the gods, Vishnu, the club, the mace. These would be all things from his background, from his samskaras, from his teachings. What would yours be? What images, what symbolism would come up for you, or have come up for you in that vision? How would you describe in words, maybe speaking to your friend or your son or a loved one? The wordless vision summed up in words. We have the approximation, we have these shlokas from 13 to 33 to 38. Arjuna's trying to describe, or Vyas, the teacher of the Vedas, the teacher of the Bhavagad Gita, is trying to give some sense of what that vision would look like from the standpoint of the seeker. But ultimately, it's our vision. It's our moment. It's our place, as we heard in the reading, in the heavens, that Jesus prepares for us and prepares for others. In Bhakti Yoga, what is the meaning of devotion? So what is the meaning of devotion? What does that mean as a core value, core essence? And again, maybe there's no words for it. Is it devotion to someone, something, some ideal, some value? What was Arjuna devoted to?
Thank you.
I think we will open it up for discussion, so yeah, just feel free to speak. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think when you were going over the list, or I shouldn't say the list, I went into meditation and then you ended it with the chant. And I could have stayed in that chant because it just, I didn't understand it, but somehow the resonance of the piece from the chant was very meaningful. And I remember in India when we were at Shantivanam, one of the monks had said that sometimes in prayer, the chants, the tone and the chants themselves are the prayer that can lead us to one, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the reading of the psalm where we had chanted, In my study of brain science, I was a science teacher, and I've taught classes in yoga to adults. And a lot of incorporation now in how brain science has kind of verified the yoga scriptures or yoga teachings. One of the main principles is that there's several avenues for accessing that peace. That we're just discussing. One of them is chanting.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary to know the words really, even. That can be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Also dancing
Mm-hmm.
to someone chanting like kirtan, music. So the dancing, the movement of the body. And again, not necessarily knowing the words or the meaning, but just the rhythm. Get into and feel that peace. Another one that we heard in Arjuna's bowing, he bowed his head. So bowing is another one where the chakra or the energy center in the back of the throat opens up. And just this simple act of bowing connects us to that non-verbal space, reduces stress in the body.
That's the nerve back there.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of nerves back
Yeah.
there. And then another one is, the third one is prostrating, so bowing. We see that in the Indian culture. We don't see it in the West too much, bowing to a teacher, going up and prostrating. But now we're seeing that it has that special value from the scientific point of view of reducing stress and bringing peace.
Yeah.
So much, thank you for the summary of both of these chapters. I've made some notes in chapter 11, this whole discussion about samadhi and what that is. And the two things that he speaks about, the savikalpa, God in human manifestation, and nirvikalpa, all forms disappear into God, into fire, and this all-consuming thing. And so this cosmic vision, there's the intellectual knowing that things have to, as you talked about, to be destroyed or disappear or be consumed in order for something new to happen, the seed. how hard it is to be open to that phenomenon. I mean, it's the destructive qualities of this path, or destructive maybe isn't the right word, this all-consuming. I feel like I'm just like hardly even the babyest baby step toward really allowing that transformation, willing to give up, willing to let go, willing to be consumed by that. Because it's all, this is this love thing, does the love, is the fire, and Teresa of Avila in the Christian tradition, I mean, John the Cross, all these great mystics, talked about that cosmic vision. It's fire. You can't look at it. It's so, and it's so easy to fall into this, like, oh, I just want to sit by the river, and that kind of sense of peace. Anyway, I wondered if you could speak to the willingness to, how does the practice of yoga help us to meet that ability to face the fire, or be the fire, or be consumed by the fire?
I think it's interesting that we all want the vision, but as the Bhagavad Gita says, it has to be bestowed. You don't just get it by doing 5 Our Fathers and Marys.
That's true.
And you can live your whole life devoted. This is the main teaching of the whole Vedas, that we have the rituals. So we can think of rituals as being our duty, or karma yoga, you could say, what we do in the world to support families, ourselves, and those around us, creatures, animals. And if we're lucky, it happens before we die. So, and that's, as we see in this, the vision is given to Arjuna. He did the work, though. I mean, he was a devotee like we all are. But it was his time, it was his moment, his time, and that's what happened for him. And there's a promise there that, and I think this is the promise of all the scriptures, is that there's the belief and the feeling that what you're doing is valuable and is bringing you peace. And we just continue marching forward in that peace. And yes, we have an idea that there's some gigantic explosion or fire and things, but in a way that may or may not be. But it's, as I said before in my talk, just the idea of the present moment. It's right here already. It's in the right now. You see, reflecting. In a way, sitting by the river is, if you could stop your mind, then that would be a fire. And maybe it happens for us for a few minutes, or maybe in a couple hours, or maybe in a dream or something, or maybe in your sadhana it has happened to you. We all have had glimpses of this, unspeakable. And so we can use that in yoga. We can use that as a way to go forward. We can use that as a meditation. We can use that as a focal point, as well as karma yoga, as well as we do devotion, and satsang, what we're doing together. All those are methods, all those spots in the reading, of Jesus preparing and finding. I mean, there's a place for all of us in that Brahman, we call it, or that eternal Father.
Yoga also helps our physical stress, that you can pray better, if that makes sense. I remember when we started going to Radha's yoga, and Sister Barbara was here, and it wasn't that physical, like exercise that we did. It was very gentle and releasing your stress. And I think, we carry a lot of the stress from the outside world, and with the with yoga, I find that it releases. Now, I'm talking about physical yoga, that practice. Bhakti yoga, I'm still not quite sure what that is. But that, and then I immediately go into prayer meditation, and it's easier for me because all those stresses that I carry that kind of goes into my mind and all this other stuff goes on, it's perfect. It's like just the yoga practice itself, and if I'm lucky, I can chant, and then prayer and meditation, and it seems to be a really good formula for me, not necessarily for everybody.
Well, what is the physical asana? Isn't it like dancing?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
one of those three. The idea of dancing or the idea of physical movement.
Yeah.
And focus on your breath or focus on relaxing. That's meditation. That's the beginning. That's why you can sit easily.
Mm-hmm.
I have an asana practice that I engage in as well too, and I find it's just very conducive to stilling the mind and going into that meditation.
And the other one is the Tai Chi. Remember with Mary Mulligan?
Mm-hmm.
That was, it was like 5 movements. And I remember one time Mary said, okay, well next week we're going to go ahead and learn some more. And I remember Jerry saying, oh, I could do this. I could stick with this practice. And it was just something about the breath and then moving our hand up and then coming down and letting go again. And somehow it just connects you. And when you're doing it with other people, it's even better.
Yeah, my friend teaches Tai Chi on the beach. Sarojini goes every Thursday morning.
Mm.
There's a few women that go out there, a few men.
Which beach?
Seacliff? Seacliff Beach? No, not
Seacliff?
Seacliff. It's
Seabright.
Seabright maybe. It's the one a little bit further south. I forget the name of it.
Oh, is this through Watsonville Yoga?
No, it's not through Watsonville Yoga.
Oh.
It's just her own special class that
Nice.
she does. Anyway, so
Another person that does that, teaching Tai Chi, is someone who knows this.
did this.
He teaches at Pinto Lake County Park.
Yeah, he's also taught at the retreats at Mount Madonna before. So I've taken a couple classes from him. That's very good.
I wanted to say that the first question you had is why, it just speaks to why I'm here and why it's so beautiful, about how would you describe the divine to a friend or to anyone. And because of my Christian orientation, I would use the universal or cosmic Christ. And yet, I find so much beauty and good in here. In fact, today, I read there's a verse in chapter 11 that is almost word for word what we heard in the gospel. And that is verse 49. Do not be troubled. Do not fear my terrible form. Let your heart be satisfied and your fears dispelled in looking at me as I was before.
Mm.
I read that and I think, that's Christ speaking. And it's all one. It's all beautiful. And for us to explore all these divine rooms, and you're sharing one of those rooms with us. And it's just wonderful. Thank you.
That list of 31, the examination of conscience is beautiful, and I just was thinking, wow, one of those things where you put up on your mirror, it's like, 31, that's the days of the month. That came to me, I was thinking, wow, if we just had one a day, and just kind of thought, oh, I hope you send us that list again, because
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
can you
was
send
so
it to
simple,
Sylvia?
friendliness.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just concentrated a day on being friendly, what a transformation of your day that would be.
Mhm.
Oh, and can that carry over? And I love that people that I consider far along, like they're in no linear thing of the path, but it's like, oh gosh, there it is, Was I friendly? It's beautiful, and it's so positive. And all the questions of our little struggle with the ego, that we have lots of practice.
It's a
It's
daily
been-
letting go, isn't
It
it?
is, and I've just been coming through a very ego-driven time, and it's like I find myself wanting to kind of, like, how to hold, like, I've just published this book of poems, and there's a lot of going out there and sharing it, and speaking in front of people, and, it's so hard to kind of want to, but it's not me, what is the service, how is that bhakti, how is taking your creative life and giving it to the world, is it possible to hold the ego back as all the kudos that you get inflate the ego? Where do you find that? Yeah, how to disappear.
Well, you asked the question about the samadhis, so I think it's interesting to note that in the yoga philosophy, one could think of the samadhi of Arjuna as being I am in bliss. In I am in bliss, there's no space or time, but there's causation, which means that there's a causer, and that causer is the ego.
Mhm.
But it's purified. It's beyond space and time. And that purified ego really is a reflection of the divine, the supreme. So when we say being egolessness, it's a common thing that we hear in the press and books and stuff. I want to be egoless, but we only want to be egoless of our negative or selfish tendencies. The ego of being in bliss is a step. It's not the ultimate, but it's a level that you can see is transformative. Can be transformative. And then ultimately, we have to go beyond even the ego of I'm in bliss to merging to the self itself, or to Jesus, or to Father.
You need the ego to be in this world, but it's how to create that balance so you don't lose that connection.
Right. So I'm a karma yogi from the beginning. That's how I got into yoga. It's self-service. It made sense to me. I didn't understand what devotion was.
Yeah.
I felt I see now that I was devotional.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't understand the word.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't understand all the theory, the yoga theory.
Yeah.
But I could work. I could connect with people through service.
Yeah.
And so that was my connection. And that's you need an ego to be in service. You need an ego to be skillful. You don't want to waste time or do something poorly. You want to put out your best effort. So that's still it's still ego, but it's still very positive, and it still brings you to that place of corralling the mind, and then you can go deeper and explore some of the other areas. But as the reading we heard today was, even if you can't do meditation, even if you can't be devoted, then just give up the works, give up the fruit of your works to God. And but Gita says the same thing. If you can't do this, you can't do this, then just give up the fruit of your works to the divine.
Right. Your work is your prayer. And that's Benedictine as well. Yeah.
I could talk about my image of the divine for hours, because it's really interesting to think about all that. So what I came up with was, first, I'm in a Yoga Sutra, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra group, and right this moment we are in the middle of reading about asana, but of the 8 steps, we're into asana right now. And it says that asana leads us to an image of the infinite. Whoa! You think asana is going to be written in the sutras about something about muscles, but of course not. It's to lead us to the infinite. And then in the commentary, we're reading 5 different commentaries, including Haridasa's. But so I don't know which commentary it is, but one of them, or many of them, said something about how do you imagine the infinite if you're going to be doing hatha yoga and moving towards the infinite. What does that mean? You know, like how can we imagine it? And one of them said that it's pretty impossible to imagine what's not imaginable. It's beyond imagination.
Yeah.
So the hint was, if you wanted to, you can imagine the vastness of the sky. And I've always done that. I mean, you know, for years and years, that's actually been my image, is that just the vastness of the sky. That's what I've done. And it works for me because it's emptying. It's very emptying. There's nothing in the sky. It's pretty empty. And I like that image. I'm trying to get to that emptiness. But I also had the thought that when my eyes are open and I'm functioning in the world, not just meditating and joining in the vastness of the sky, that all of us and everything and the walls and the pictures and the people and the desk, that it's all the forms of God. And to be able to imagine that we are all these expressions of God consciousness, that's mind-blowing also. And if I could do that more often, then I would be friendly and open to all and compassionate, because how couldn't I be? Because if I'm really, really tuned into that oneness, that real energy of oneness, then here we are. So it's interesting, because with my eyes closed meditating, it's, you know, nothing exists. Bye-bye, everybody. It's just empty. And then when I'm functioning, here we are. We're all dancing the dance together. So that's what I came up with for that. And also, really, I could take, I know, I'm supposed to be quiet now, but I wanted to say that when I went to New Zealand, the best part was coming back with the chant that we danced to in Sufi dancing in Maori. There's a lovely Maori chant that we learned and danced to, and I went and I got the exact translations as best I could from the Maori teacher who really knew what the words meant. And there's one line where they use the words Rangi Marie, and it means the sky peace, the peace of the sky. And I went, oh, the Maoris knew that. And we always imagine the Maoris as they're sticking out their tongue and being warriors, but they also knew the peace of the sky. So
What a great
that's it.
segue for us, Radha.
Yeah, the
The peace of the sky. I'm going to write that down.
Rangi Marie.
Peace of
Is
the
that
sky.
Yeah, thank you for the question,
yeah.
because it really tuned me into that.
We can take and PD, thank you for opening up this
Yeah, thank you.
teaching for us today.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you so
we-
much.
We were planning to take a couple minutes for a little, if people need that, or we can go right into meditation. Does anybody need a bathroom break or anything? And I know you can't
Are you
stay.
leaving?
Could you send the list of 31
Yeah.
qualities of a devotee to?
Yeah, to Albina, we'll get that to everyone.
Okay.
So I know Sylvia
Do you have the
cannot
check?
stay for meditation, but